It's Hey guys, how are you? It's about 8 o'clock in Sand Valley and about 8 a.m. in Silicon Valley. So late night in the office here for me in Dubai, but glad to be able to talk with you. So hey, listen, we talked about U to the power of two last time, and ultimately, U to the power two is about this new thing that we call agentic AI. And what I thought I would do today is basically talk to you about what is it like to move, or what can you expect to do business in the GCC? What is it like? And especially, what do I think is like in light of artificial intelligence and what's happening in today's environment? What can you expect? What do I like in working in the GCC? What do I think are some of the challenges or differences in the Silicon Valley? I get that a lot, and I'll answer that as it relates to, or as it goes and talks about artificial intelligence. So let's start with one of the things that I really enjoy about the GCC. So the first thing I would tell you about the GCC is that AI talent is extremely undervalued, underrated. There is a tremendous amount of talent in the region. They're excited, they're enthusiastic. And if you think about the way I would kind of think about some analogy perspective, if you thought about like the NBA, and when we had the dream team when it first came out with Jordan, Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and they played the teams that were all around the world and they killed them, right? They were just so strong and dominant. But then as the game progressed, people began to catch up. And in fact, you look at the NBA, many of the top 5, 10 players in the NBA aren't from America, aren't from the US anymore. And that's a great and wonderful thing. Well, AI has kind of democratized knowledge. And while we have some incredible institutions in the US, everybody has availability to knowledge. And so the talent here, AI talent, is extremely undervalued. I love it. They're excited. They're enthusiastic. And I think that is something that I think is great to work at when you come to the region. Now, that being said, on the downside, or the challenge, I would say, is that while this talent is so excited, there isn't a lot of process maturity. And so what I mean by that, whether you're talking about starting a business and having a clear process of how to do that or execute that, all the way to just permitting, and it's in general, and I'm classifying the GCC in general. I want to be clear. There's a lot of different countries in the GCC, but if you think about it in general, where I would say probably Dubai and Saudi are probably one of the more mature countries in the GCC. But if you think about it, there's a lot coming from Silicon Valley. There's a lot of things that you're going to take for granted from a business process standpoint that just, quite frankly, aren't ready, aren't mature yet. Okay. The other thing I think that's pretty cool and pretty exciting about the region is the fact that labor costs. So when you think about the cost of this labor, it is not obviously as expensive. But what that means is that it is going to be easier, quite frankly, to use AI as an enhancement, as an enhancer of value for people, rather than replace. Because in Silicon Valley, given the higher cost of labor, you're seeing AI really get to, how can I pull people out? Well, because the labor cost, the cost of living is less, it's much easier economically to have a conversation and from a CEO perspective and invest in things that are about helping and accelerating your existing talent, because the cost of that talent is less. And so trying to remove that off your balance sheet, or trying to remove that off your income statement, isn't as big of a deal, given the fact that the cost of labor is quite a bit less, especially if you are starting a business. And so if you pair that again with something that I would say is different, or I would say challenging in the environment, and that is, while the labor cost is lower in the GCC environment in general, I would say that there is an opportunity to confuse activity with results. So there's a lot of people, or it's a segment of the market that loves to make announcements. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's awesome. They're excited about what they're doing, and that's great. But you have to be very clear between understanding what is an announcement that is a hope to be, and what is an actual be. And if you're starting a business, you got to make sure that you're very, very clear on that, because the sales cycles can be elongated. And if you're not sure with what is real and what isn't, because again, in Silicon Valley, being a much more mature in the business sense, we typically will announce what we've done. But in many parts of the regions, they will announce what they're going to do. And again, it's not a bad thing. It's just that you need to be very, very clear and be able to ferret out what's real and what isn't. So that's another thing. One of the things I like, I would say, is whether you go to Saudi or Dubai or Qatar, wherever place you go in GCC, if you ask the driver, a taxi cab driver, tell me about your 2030 vision plan, they know about it. And so the government support for transformation, this is a commitment. This is not a marketing ploy. The government and the people's support for them to transform is huge. And so I think that, again, is something that I think you'll enjoy. I've enjoyed if you come to the Middle East. On the flip side of that, a challenge that I would say that that I've incurred, and I think that you would definitely incur as you come to the Middle East, is the fact that, look, the private sector in most countries in the Middle East really isn't private. And what I mean by that is it's in its infancy. Most of these are private companies, have been funded or are owned significantly by the government. And so what that means is they've overlaid a governmental process to ensure that they are managing these things appropriately. And so that can mean a lot of red tape. And so you just need to understand that the government entities play a much bigger role in the development and success of the private sector, much more so than you would find in Silicon Valley. But to that point, I will tell you this: the thing that I like, the positive about that is, let me tell you, man, when they commit to something, they commit, and I mean they commit big. And so I think that, again, from the top to the bottom, when I say that, I'm talking about 100% alignment in an organization. If you're going to think about how do you move an organization as quickly as possible, the best way to move an organization is to quickly gain alignment. If you can't align, you can't execute. Alignment, you can take 1,000-person organization and that will turn into 1,000 individual companies if you can't get 1,000 people aligned. If you get 1,000 people aligned, they will move and execute quickly. That is an advantage when you work in the GCC with these government mandated mandates, man. When it's a clear objective, that is a great thing. And so that's something that I think that you will see. Now, there's a downside to that. The downside is in most of these countries, a lot, especially you think about Saudi, you think about Dubai, you think about some of the more successful countries in the GCC, they are used to people coming to them and asking for things, right? And asking for money. And so their processes have grown up around managing the downside, meaning they have the money, and so they're having to figure out what investment should they make or not make. Is that going to be good? They want to make sure that there's nothing, that they manage the downside. And so what that means is they have multiple layers of boards. The CEO does not have the same decision-making power in the Silicon Valley you do in the GCC by far. It is definitely a management by committee and multiple committees, which can be very, very frustrating if you don't understand the decision-making process. But probably the biggest problem is that I would see is that people on the boards, most of the time, they are not compensated if that entity does well. So in other words, they are there. If that entity does something wrong, then that board is accountable. But if that entity does something well, they don't share in the wealth. So therefore, everything is about managing the downside. So you will find that in some cases, they would rather stop 100 good ideas than to allow one bad one to go through. And so I think you just have to be prepared and understand that there's a layer of conservatism that you need to be clear about, that when you come to the GCC, that you need to be clear. It's definitely something you can overcome. And it's just a matter of where they are in the development cycle. And again, this does not apply to every single situation in the GCC, but that is something that I think is very clear, and one that you will definitely you'll definitely run into. The last thing I would say about GCC, especially as it relates to AI, is that I got to tell you, the people, if you've gone to the Midwest in the US and you say that Midwest hospitality, that's what you get in the GCC. I mean, Oman, Saudi has treated me so well, Oman so well, Dubai, they are so welcoming and willing to share. And I think that's something that takes a little getting used to if you are, again, coming from Silicon Valley, which is they look for partnership before competition. They look for fellowship before we're going to compete, before we're going to have conflict. They look for common ground. And so I think it's a wonderful refreshment. It's a refreshing thing to kind of be a part of and to really enjoy. So anyway, hey, listen, I'm going to sign off now. I've been talking for about 11 minutes, and hopefully you've enjoyed the show. And we'll be back next week. We're trying to do 2 of these every week. Tell people about it. Would love to interact with you, get a chance to hear some great ideas, and just get a chance to meet some really, really powerful and incredibly talented people. And I will leave you with this. When it comes to AI, we talk about agentic AI. Do not worry. You are not obsolete. You are very much upgradable. See you guys. Have a good one. Bye-bye.